Yep.
Shout out the careers page, which is like pivotallabs.com/careers.
Okay, sounds good. You got it. All right. Welcome, everybody. Hey, Lee, how are you in the live stream? Ready to do it? Hello, New York City. Hello, world. My name is Luke Melia. Welcome to Ember NYC July 2015 edition. We're excited to have you, especially you, Michael. And we have an awesome lineup tonight. I'm very excited for it. And I want to do a few logistics, and then we're just going to go right into the speakers. We've got 4 lightning talks and then 2 kind of main talks. And I'll introduce each of the talks as we go through. But first, I want to call your attention to our meetup page. If you are not already a member of the meetup, you should definitely do that. We do 2 types of events, generally speaking, as part of Ember NYC. We do this kind of event, which is a monthly evening of talks. Fairly, I wouldn't call it formal, but it's more formal. People prepare talks with slides and code examples and stuff like that. We then also have evenings that are much more informal, much more hands-on, and smaller. We call those nights project nights. We try to do 1 or 2 a month. My co-organizer, Jorge, helps organize those. He's not here tonight, unfortunately. It's his CEO's birthday they're celebrating. But he has put the next one on the calendar, which is going to be Monday, August 10th. And it's going to be focused on a project called Ember Twiddle, which we're going to learn more about a little bit later tonight. So that's cool. The next one of these is going to be Thursday, August 27th. It's up in the meetup now to RSVP. We don't have a lineup yet. If you are interested in presenting, shoot me an email, luke@lukemelia.com. I usually put my email on the talk descriptions for people to reach out. You can also follow us on Ember NYC on Twitter, and on the Ember.js community Slack, we have a relatively new NYC channel that you can join as well. So I wanted to say thank you to our sponsors that make this possible every month. And then I'm going to open the floor up to announcements from any of you. So be thinking if there's something that you'd like to share. And then I'll introduce our speakers and we'll get rolling. So our first sponsor and number 1 sponsor, if you will, is where we are tonight. This is Pivotal Labs. Many of you probably are familiar with Pivotal. They're one of the top agile consulting firms in the country or in the world, actually. Rails, iOS, Java, you name it, really great stuff. Really focused on test-driven development, pair programming. A great place to learn if you are a developer kind of midway in your career perhaps and want to become part of a team where you're really going to learn good practices, how to run projects effectively, etc. Pivotal Labs is hiring. They have a careers page at pivotallabs.com/careers. Some of my good friends work here, including my brother-in-law, Micah, who's not around tonight but is often around for these events. And so if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. You can talk to Rob in the back, who's in the gray t-shirt. But really great organization and has been an amazing supporter of Ember NYC hosting us for the last 2.5 years, providing us with a great event space, drinks, pizza. This stuff is not easy to do in New York, and so we really appreciate Pivotal. In addition to Pivotal, we have Yap Labs, Yap Labs company. We are a product company and consultancy. Our consultancy specializes in Ember.js consulting and training. I know I've worked with many of you here in the room in that capacity, and if anybody has needs along those lines, please get in touch, and we're always happy to work with new folks. In addition to those 2 companies, we have 2 sponsors of our project nights. They are Simple Reach is one of them. I saw the Simple Reach crew come in the back. Nice to see you all. Simple Reach hosts those project nights usually once a month or once every 2 months. They're always very generous with their space and time. We really appreciate it. And then the other is Movable Ink. Anyone from Movable Ink here tonight? They're just catty corner to us and also host our project nights regularly and feed us and keep us happy. So big thank you to all of those sponsors. With that, I want to open up the floor to announcements from any of you. That could be people who are hiring Ember developers looking to get hired, announcements about events relevant to the folks in this room. If you want to say something, just come up here. I'll hand you a mic.
Hi. I'm from GoWatchIt.com, and we're hiring some Ember developers. So if you guys are interested in helping change the way how Hollywood studios market movies for the digital generation, come talk to us. Yeah.
Awesome. Good stuff. Anybody else? Okay. I was reminded that we do, if you have something, feel free to come up. We have an event that is loosely affiliated with Ember NYC, in as much as at least a handful of us in this room are going to be there, and that's in Portland, Maine, on August 18th. And it's Portland, Maine's first Ember.js mini unconference. Ray Tiley's been helping to organize it. Thanks, Ray. And it should be a lot of fun. I'm going to be up there on vacation, and so we decided just to put together a little event, and we've already got 12 or 13 folks signed up. So if you happen to be up that way, get in touch, and we would love to hack with you then. Here you go.
Hi, thanks. My name is Atma, and I am building a new kind of accelerator. And we're looking for a partner in the product development phase or domain. If you would like to learn more about what it would be like to be part of a very new disruptive accelerator that is completely the reverse of all the ones that exist, please come talk to me. It's an exciting model, and I'd be happy to share it with you.
Cool. Thanks, Atma. All right. With that, I want to introduce our first speaker. This gentleman is joining us from Chicago. I had the pleasure of getting to know him a little bit when I was out speaking at Chicago Ember.js about a year ago, a little over a year ago. And he, at the time, told me about a project that he had started to cook up called Ember-CLI-Chrome. Projects come a long way, gotten a bunch of adoption, and so here to tell us more about that tonight, welcome Justin McNally. Do you want a handheld or a over-the-ear mic? Your choice. Depends if you're coding. Okay, yeah. Cool. Just talk. Put your mouse.
Hi, how's everyone doing tonight? Good, good, I hope. I think I missed. Can you hear that? Cool, that'll make it easier. All right, so the project that I just wanted to come and talk about a little bit is something I've been working on for a while called Ember-CLI-Chrome. Basically, the goal of the project is that Chrome extensions are really suited towards being single-page applications, but they're, at least when I started the project, not really great tooling for it. We needed a robust, repeatable way to make Chrome extensions, and a lot of the examples and stuff we were running into used HTML and jQuery, which was kind of gross. And we felt like, based on some of the work we'd been doing with Ember, it would be a really great choice in frameworks to start building some Chrome extensions out with. So what we ended up doing was settling on that and Ember CLI, because that gives us a nice build tool that's kind of outside of your typical Ruby or something like that. It could kind of really build us like a nice little package that we could ship in the Chrome store. And basically, the biggest problem that we ran into with Ember CLI, at least when we started, was that it took a lot of config and changing things around and hackery to make it work properly with a Chrome extension. So we sort of started to dig under the hood. Like I said, it was very early. I think it was right after add-ons were originally being created. Like, so some of the things in terms of what you could do with trees and things like that for like injecting some of our custom files just wasn't fully fleshed out. It basically needed a lot of hacks. Specifically, the config.js or like the environment that it was being created at the time was being included directly on the index.html page, which Chrome would complain about based on some sort of like content source inline sort of error. So the project actually started just so that we could kind of build that as a separate file and include it dynamically into the index.html. And this was specifically back for Ember CLI 0037. But one of the really cool things, as I've kind of been maintaining this, is that Ember add-ons have come like a really long way. So, you know, props to the people working on those projects and the CLI for giving us much cleaner ways to do things like this. So today, we're up to Ember CLI version 2.7. I think that that's even a little bit behind. That's just kind of like what the last time that we really like updated the add-on was. I believe it should work with like the latest. There's only one big hack in it, which is that it allows us to forcibly set the location type to hash, because based on auto, there's no sense of like URL routing like within the Chrome pop-up window. So we can't use like a auto or like the location based type, and that's actually what we ship with by default. So the options were we can kind of put this hack in there and just have everything work like as soon as somebody tries to boot it up, or like have a whole bunch of extra configuration steps. So for now, I like to take the approach that we're just going to make it work like when it ships, and then as things progress, I think maybe we'll get some more options potentially like in Ember add-on, and hopefully we can remove those hacks. Yeah, and what's really been great compared to some of the earlier versions where we were doing like weird tree injections and things like that to put in our custom JS files to the public is the hooks are much more robust, and we can do a lot more stuff with the app add-ons. So it's really cleaned up the code base quite a bit. So that's really been awesome. Right now, the goals for the project are that it just works, no additional configurations. So kind of went over that slightly. Start developing with the Ember CLI immediately. So basically just right before I started this, I actually built a little demo project that I'll show you in a minute. It was like 2 seconds, like npm install like on a new project, Ember install the add-on name, and like I can install it into the Chrome browser and start developing it. So that really made it nice. And one of the big things is that it ships a manifest and icons, and the manifest is dynamically created from your app.json. So basically any changes you make to the project will automatically get carried over in your manifest.json. And when I say manifest.json, if you've ever done any Chrome development, it's kind of like the thing that describes your Chrome extension. So one of the goals was to have it automatically create that. I mean, that's pretty much what it does now that most of the hackery's fixed. So the future, definitely need to get more tests written around it, don't we always? Support Chrome apps. So that's been like a big user request that we've been getting in the GitHub issues is there's really 2 types of things. There's a Chrome extension and then a Chrome, I guess it would be like kind of like a native application. So we haven't done a lot of digging into that. Currently it would be supported by just shipping your own manifest file, but I'd like to have like some options for it moving forward. A way to kind of integrate the background HTML and JS files. So what those are, if you haven't done Chrome extension development before, you can optionally specify that certain scripts or HTML files should run in the background of basically like every tab or like basically every Chrome instance. And then those can do things like monitor the URL the user's on, or like listen to like a webhook and then like interact with the browser in some way. So right now we kind of have to ship those as separate JS files, but it would be really nice if we could share some of like the controllers or some sort of like web worker or something like along those lines, like with the Ember code base, because there's a lot of things that we might want to bring over. Like if anyone's used Ember Simple Auth or something along like that, you might already have a HTTP connection or authentication set up in your local storage. You just want to use kind of that same setup. So it would be nice to have some sort of bridge between the Ember application that might be running in the pop-up window and then some background scripts if you have those. So that'd be great. And then wrapping the Chrome API, bookmark, tab APIs, things like that in a promise API so that we can do more sophisticated routing. Right now, you just kind of do that on your own, but I'd like to create a full-blown API for the Chrome API that lets it act more like a data provider, so that we can basically just return a promise in one of our routes, wait for it to return like the tab, the current tab URL, a bookmark list, whatever it be. All those things run asynchronously. So having a wrapper with promises would be really helpful. So those are some of the goals. So now I can show like a quick demo, and I'll put the emphasis on quick. So what I have here is pretty much a brand new Ember project. It was started with Ember new, and then we just did an Ember install Ember-CLI-Chrome, so that installed the add-on, and a build watch. So I use build watch because none of the live reloading stuff works just because of the context of it's in a Chrome pop-up. You can do like a lot of the development in the browser, but when you actually put it into the pop-up, if you run the watch command, it'll basically like keep building your changes and automatically be reflected in Chrome. So then to install that, what we do is we go to the Chrome extensions. Right, it'll bring up a screen like this, and then you basically just click Load Unpacked Extension, and you find your project. So I have Project Chrome Demo, and then your dist folder. So that's where everything gets built to. So you're going to use your built dist folder as the unpacked extension path, and then it's going to basically add this Chrome Demo right here, and it ships with a nice little Tomster icon. And then you can see that that's been added right here. And then I went ahead and coded a few little things, like a little thing, just so you can see some of the of it, but without any CSS, we basically just have a little pop-up that lives in Chrome that says, "Welcome to Ember NYC." This is the index page. Then we can kind of show how this is useful, because by clicking that, we can now route to another state, and then that all gets managed right in the pop-up. So to do that in JavaScript, you'd be doing a lot of jQuery, insert elements, things like that, where in this case, it all kind of lives there like really nicely as an Ember application. So I think that ends up being really useful. Yeah, I mean, for the most part, that's it. One of the other things that it does ship with and runs with is there's a little helper. Let me see if I can pull it up real quick. Sorry. So this basically sits there and it listens for events on the DOM subtree modified. So what'll happen is, like, when you navigate between states in the Chrome extension, like typically, the window will pretty much stay the size of the largest that it was, but in the way that like these routes will happen, sometimes you might have a view that's 200 or 300 pixels tall, and then your next one's 500, and your next one's 200 again. So this basically listens for that and like forces the viewport to change back. So it's really useful as you're routing through multiple substates, and you might want to have those kind of like work differently. So it's just something we kind of ship to make it feel more like the applications that you're probably like used to writing, like when you work with it. So. Let me go back. So the project, you can find it at github.com, j-McNally, Ember-CLI-Chrome. Just some quick stats. There's 34 stars on it, 6 forks, 2 contributors. It has an Ember add-on score of 6, which is okay. And I would love for anyone here that's interested in Chrome app development and Chrome extension development to talk to me, or see if there's ways or things that you might be interested in helping out in the project.
We got time for a question or two for Justin. I'm going to run a mic back.
So as you're building with it, what's your development flow? Do you do it in Chrome, or do you like run it through localhost 4200?
Yeah, so it really depends like what I'm doing. So the last thing that I built with it was like a bookmarking API integration. So in that case, we had some stub data to run off like, port 3000. So when I'm building out a lot of the views and stuff like that, but at some point you really have to kick it back to what I was showing with the Ember build watch, because you can't access the tabs API, for instance, or the bookmarks API from like a normal tab. It has to be running in an extension mode. But so kind of like a hybrid, basically. When you're styling and designing, like a lot of that can be done kind of with your live reload server, because it's a lot faster and more efficient. But you get to a point where you really want to start using that like right as the extension, or else you might run into some issues.
We have one more question. All right, let's give a hand to Justin. All right. So our next speaker I mentioned earlier, he's helping to organize our Portland, Maine event on August 18th. This is his second time, despite being a Portland, Maine resident, this is his second time speaking at Ember NYC.
From New Jersey.
All right, from New Jersey. Gentleman's been doing a lot of work in Ember for a long time and has recently kind of upped his game in terms of contributing back to the community, writing. And one of the things that he's been working on is that he's going to give an update on today is Ember-list-view. So please welcome Ray Tiley.
Hello. So is anyone using list-view currently? All right, cool. So you're all on like 111, 112 right now, right? I'm sorry. Okay, so I'm back. Like Luke said, I was here a few months ago. I gave a talk on components, and then Glimmer landed, and everything's different, so I'm sorry if you watched that video. So like Luke said, I'm in Maine. We're doing an event. Come hang out. There's only 13 people registered, and it should be fun. So if you're going to come vacation, you should come anyway. All right, so Glimmer, right? Like, yay, really fast, really fast. Is Ember fast yet? Well, maybe. So I have this like pathological app, and I just have tons of problems with it. It's great. I'm an awesome developer. I've had like multiple members of the Ember.js core team like look at it with me, and like we try to find bugs in Ember, make it faster. There was recently like a memory leak that I found in my app, and I reported it, and Tom Dale wrote like a novel explaining how he fixed it. And so a number of like the novel Tom Dale posts have been bugs that I found. So, but it got to the point where like there's like two things you can do in performance, right? You can make the work faster, and that's what Glimmer is doing. It's making the rendering engine faster, or you can do less work. And that's what list-view does. So list-view takes a really long list of stuff and only shows what the user of your site can actually see. And the problem is that like, has anyone looked at the list-view code? Like, it is super, it uses a lot of internals, private APIs, it's really complex, and it's hard to grok. And, but I needed it, but I was already on like 1.13. I was actually already on like the 2.0 beta. Like I needed list-view, but I couldn't use it. So I actually did a day of pairing with Chris Selden at Yap Labs, and we kind of spiked out what Glimmer supported list-view looks like. And it was actually super easy. And then I've been, over the past week or so, just kind of like updating it and getting it further along. So I'm going to show you some of that stuff. So real quick, just to kind of show like what list-view is doing, I'm going to have to put down my mic for a second. So say you have 1,000 items, right? The simplest way to do less work is to just slice those items, so 0 to 10, only display 10 of them. And if we reload this, it reloads really fast. Boom, yay. So what does like, but I can't do anything, I can't see all the items. So like a super naive implementation, we need a little bit of CSS to like make things over scroll and stuff. We need to set up, so I'm gonna hide the CSS. So we need to like handle the scroll event. So like on did insert element, we're gonna handle the scroll event. And when we scroll, we're gonna calculate what the starting item should be. And then we're gonna add some padding to the top of this inner item to like push everything down. And then what happens is when we scroll and we start like, recycling the items. So super naive. Like basically what we're doing is we're calculating how many items can fit, and then positioning the items that can fit like within a container so that as the user scrolls, they're in the right place. And what this does is it allows you to scroll through long lists of items without having them all rendered at the same time. So what is like a more polished list view look like? And that's kind of what we're working on now. So let me just refresh. So simply, so 1,000 items. Scroll is pretty nice. And what's really nice is how this looks to use. So if we look at simple JS here, we're just giving it the items, the height that we want, the width of each item, the buffer, and then the neat thing is this cell layout here, and we can pass it different ways to organize the content within the bounds. And then we just get yielded the item back to us in our template, and we can do whatever we want with it. So it's a component. It has each semantics, so it's just like using each. You just replace it with Ember list. You have to pass it a few more details. This buffer thing isn't necessary. It's just something I added. I'm playing around with different APIs. But right now, what you have to pass it is the height and the width of what your scrollable area looks like. And then a layout. And so a fixed grid layout, width and height. So this is the same width as the container. So we get, 500. But all this stuff is data bound. So we can do a slightly more complicated demo. And so say here I'm, change my container width. The items are flowing. I can change the container height. I can also change the different layouts. So if I want a long rectangle, a tall rectangle, I can even handle shuffling the items around. So again, that's 1,000 items. So cool. So moving on, kind of. Regular straight fixed grids are cool, but what if we have different sized items? We can handle that too. So just lay it all out. And then some newer APIs that I've been playing around with are, say you load a bunch of images, right? But this might be backed by async data, and you don't want to hit your server for every item as you scroll really fast through it. So what I've been working on, see how it says loading as I'm scrolling through all that? And then as I settle down and stop scrolling, it'll start filling in the cells. And so, again, that looks super simple. So if I go into my cell stability template, basically the same template, except I'm exposing a cell to, and then I have this isStable property. And that's just, while I'm scrolling, the cells are unstable, and so I can render something really simple, do less work, so don't render a huge component. Or once the cells become stable, I can render an image tag or something like that. So doing something like infinite scroll gets fun. So I get down to the bottom of this list, and I can just put a button in when I've reached the end, and I can load more content. And then how I'm doing that is in this template, I just I have item. So this is the regular item. So it's one of the results, and I'm just branding that item with the isLoading indicator. And so if it's not a loading indicator, I render my normal item. If not, I render a button that does an action to load more. And then in my controller, so if I go to infinite, sorry, I'll increase the size here. So the way that's just working is the results is I'm taking the page and the page size, and I'm creating an array of the results. And I'm just, if the last item is less than the item's length, like in my model, I just add this empty object that has that brand on it so I can render that button. So that's a really simple way to get to the Facebook style UI where you have a little thing to say load more results down at the bottom. And then, but what if I just want to keep going? Well, I can do something like this, where instead of rendering a button, ListView itself just, so the images, the image mocking services get really annoyed when you request 500 images in 1 second. But so as I'm getting to the bottom, it's firing an action telling me that, hey, you've reached the end of the rendered content. And so that's using the same exact action. It's just, if I go to my infinite action HBS, it's just on last item entered, I send that load more action. And so what's awesome about ListView now is that it's using all of Glimmer's internals. And so it's doing a lot less. It doesn't have to use any private APIs. All it is about a 200-line component So, a bunch of math. And then this is the actual template for it. And so it's just doing an each inside of itself and setting some styles and stuff. So it's a lot simpler. And what's really awesome about this is I understand all the code. And I think most people can. And so I'm really happy that list-view is going this way because I think it'll be a lot easier to keep list-view up to date with Ember as Ember moves, because that's been a huge problem. I think a lot of people use list-view and then they can't upgrade Ember, or they keep on top of Ember and can't use list-view. And so we're finally getting to the point where the internals of Ember are good enough that we can have a really simple add-on to do list-view. And so where can you get it? Well, right now, like me and Chris Selden are both working on it, and we both have 2.0 branches in our GitHub. And it's pretty easy to use one of those branches. You just, you can put it in your package JSON and then just use the Git way of getting that add-on. And it's, either Ray Tyler or Chris Selden / list-view, and then just use the 2.0 branch. So what do we have to do next to get list-view actually usable by everyone? Well, we have to write tests because there's no tests yet. And we want to delegate all the things. You kind of saw how I was passing in the layout. What we want to do is be able to kind of have hooks and delegates for everything. So right now, it's doing some CSS transform positioning to get the items in the right spot because it's more efficient than that padding hack that I was doing. But what we kind of want to do is you pass in a delegate that will create the CSS for the item to position it. So if you have reasons that you don't want to use transforms and you want to use top and left, then it can do that. You can pass in your own layout. It just has a very simple API of give me the position of an item. And then you saw, what I was kind of working on now is all the hooks for everything. So being able to say when an item enters or an item leaves, or I've reached the top or the bottom, that kind of stuff, or what the momentum is and the stability of the item and all that stuff. So what we're looking to do is get an add-on that's super flexible, so you can do whatever you want with it. Right now, it only supports things like divs and stuff, but eventually it could support things like tables and stuff. And then if you want to help out too, the other thing, like I said, the delegate, all the complicated math stuff of positioning and layout and that bin packing algorithm, that's all coming from something that Steph Penner wrote. That's the package. I've already fixed a couple bugs in it. There's actually one right now, and I don't know if anyone caught it, but what's really nice is that the list view is super simple, and all the complicated math is in another library, and that's a dependency that we can use. And so if you're good at math and you want to write more efficient bin packing algorithms that people could use, that's also something that would be really awesome. Right now there's a fixed grid one and a first shelf fit or something, but there's all sorts of algorithms that are better for different situations or how people want to lay out stuff. So if you are into that thing, you could write some bin packing algorithms. And that's all I got. If you have any questions about list view, come find me.
We got time for one or two questions now. Anybody? Andre, you're on a roll.
No kidding, sorry. So, Ray, every time I've used list view, I've kind of wanted it to have the standard height and width of whatever was in, kind of not having to worry about the style when I've used it. And I always end up writing a listener to okay, watch my window height so that I can set the height of list view that. Is there any kind of thought as you guys are building it to have an automatic, if I don't set the height, to just use the height of whatever it's in?
So the height of the container or the height of the items?
Well, the height of the container itself, right? So say I've got it on a page and I don't want a fixed width or fixed height container, I just want it to be the rest of the page.
Yeah, so that's the hardest problem in CSS and web development, I think, is getting a div to be the rest of the window height. Right now, it binds the height, so if you change the height, it will update, so you kind of have to pass that in. There are basically the idea, right now we're trying to just make it work, and then there are ideas about doing multi-pass rendering layouts. So you keep adding items, and then you detect when the last item is no longer visible, and then you would stop adding items. And so that way you could basically keep adding items, and then the container will grow until it like starts overflowing or it runs out of space, and then you could detect that and stop it. But right now we're not doing that because measuring stuff in the DOM is pretty expensive depending on when you're doing it, and Ember gets all upset if you do stuff when it's in its rendering loop. So right now we're not doing that, but it's definitely something I would like. I would like you to not have to pass in so much knowledge and have it do the right thing, but not yet.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you, Ray. All right. So while our next speaker gets set up, I want to tip you off to evening plans. So as many of you know who have been here before, we often go out for a drink after. We're going to try something a little different tonight for those of you who are up for an adventure. Anybody know Yehuda Katz? Familiar? Okay. So Yehuda works on Ember. We've been working on it for a long time. And he is in New York tonight. He's giving a talk about Rust out in Brooklyn. And there's an after party for that talk at a bar called Lavender Lake in Cobble Hill. So we're going to go to Cobble Hill for anybody who's up for it after we wrap up tonight. Have a drink, meet up with Yehuda and the folks there. So just wanted to give you a little advance notice in case you need to plan, alert your loved ones, etc. All right, so our next speaker is no stranger to the Ember NYC stage. He's a regular contributor both to the project nights as well as to these evenings of talks. He's been doing Ember for quite a while now, at least a year and a half at least. 3 years, I would say, too. And he's going to tell us about a project that is, I think you will agree after you see it, is actually really sorely needed in the community. I won't steal his thunder. Let's hear it for Gaurav telling us about Ember Twiddle.
Hello, everybody. So, Ember Twiddle. Hello, my name's Gaurav Munjal. I'm a new contributor to Ember Twiddle. I also work at HedgeServe. And you can find me at Gaurav9576 on Twitter. Twiddle is to play negligently, to jounce lightly, to twist, according to Merriam-Webster. So code sharing tools are essential for OSS projects. I found this on the web, quoting from my good friend Just de Vries, who is one of the main contributors to Ember Twiddle. One of the main reasons for this is bug reports, documentation, QA, code analysis, but the reasons we use them go on and on. And everyone knows about today's state-of-the-art code sharing tool. It's called JSBin. In fact, our last speaker was using it. The problem with using this with Ember is, of course, that you need to use globals mode. You need to put all your templates in index.html. And, of course, you have no Ember CLI. So what is Ember Twiddle? It's backed by GitHub gists. It's authenticated with Tori, and it runs Ember CLI code. You don't have to translate your code to use the old app namespace to share it now. This is a basic gist, so if you've never seen a GitHub gist, this is what it looks like. And this is actually a GitHub gist created by the Ember Twiddle. Some of my recent contributions to Ember Twiddle: support for Ember data, support for style sheets, support for routing, support for external dependencies to import in. So based on all this, Ember Twiddle is actually usable now. In fact, as of today, we are releasing Ember Twiddle 0.4.0. And now we're going to demo it. So, of course, everyone's favorite app, the To-Do MVC app in Ember Twiddle. And as you can see, it's got all the usual things that you would normally want from an Ember CLI app. You can basically look through all these files, and if you were to go ahead and make a change anywhere in this code, it would immediately reflect. For example, if I were to change the capitalization on to-dos, it just rebuilds and to-dos is now capitalized. Or if I were to go into the style sheet and decide that I just want a really big font, I could do that too. So Ember Twiddle also has the ability now to bring in external dependencies. Now, the way we're doing this, I would say, is probably just the easiest way I could think of. It's not exactly the best. So if anyone here has more ideas on how we can do this better, I would love to hear them, and we'd love to have your contributions. But right now, you just have a twiddle.json file, which lets you enter your dependencies. And one of the things that, and basically you can see that this particular file has brought in Bootstrap CSS, which you can tell by the actual code on the right. A couple of things I'd like to tell you about Ember Twiddle. Right now, it's not obvious how to remember your saved twiddle. The thing is, you'll probably go into your GitHub gists and grab your code from the URL like this. It's kind of annoying. Go to Ember Twiddle. .com, write a slash, paste it in, and that's your twiddle. What we'd really like is to be able to have a nice directory service of some kind where you could actually see all the gists you've saved in your GitHub account. So this particular gist is somebody who was actually talking on the Ember Twiddle Slack channel. He just created it a debounced list, so you can check that out. By the way, we're always talking on the Ember Twiddle Slack channel, and you can find us here all the time. Just go to Ember Twiddle, and I'm talking about the bugs that are currently in this thing, so you can see that. And finally, going back to the presentation, Ember Twiddle's on the move. We are now an official Ember CLI project. We are on github.com/ember-cli/ember twiddle, and we have our own domain. We now are at http://ember-twiddle.com with a dash in it. We now have 7 contributors, and you can see that in the last couple of weeks, we've really taken off with the contributions. So this project's really taking off, and I really hope to see it continue to do so. Thanks. I'd like to hear any questions you have.
I got a question. Is there, one of the cool features of JS Fiddle is forking. Is there the idea of forking in Ember Twiddle?
Yes. You can definitely fork a twiddle. If you go to anybody's twiddle and just go down to fork twiddle, it will fork. This was already my twiddle, so it didn't do anything, but
Cool.
But yeah, that would normally do it.
Nice. Any other questions?
Where can we find out about the roadmap for features?
For features, we do have a really out-of-date roadmap on the issues page. You can go ahead and look at that. a lot of the things on the roadmap are actually already completed, so bear with us while we are running ahead of ourselves on that front.
I may have missed it. You may have said it, but what is Twiddle built with?
Oh, it is built with Ember CLI.
Oh, really?
Yes, it's an Ember CLI application that runs Ember CLI applications.
Have you tried loading Ember Twiddle and Ember Twiddle?
No.
Just curious.
I'm not about to try in front of the group.
All right, let's give a big hand to Gaurav. Thank you. Somebody asked me what the name of the place we're going to in Cobble Hill is. It's called Lavender Lake, if you want to look it up. All right. We are coming. This next talk is the last of our lightning talks. So we're going to do this, then we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to get rolling into our final two talks for the evening. So our next speaker has spoken before at Ember NYC. In addition to that, she has spoken at Ember Camp. No, not the original Ember Camp. I stand corrected. Ember Conf. No. First one, no. Any Wicked good Ember. Yes. This speaker has been, in addition to doing Ember professionally and contributing a bunch to the community through just helping folks out, being part of the community, she has recently really done a huge service to the community with Ember Observer, and that's the thing that she's going to talk with us tonight. So please welcome Katie Gengler.
Hi. Is this working? All right. As Luke said, I'm Katie Gengler, and I'm talking about Ember Observer, which is, hopefully some of you have used. It's categorization and scoring of add-ons, kind of a spin-off of Ember add-ons. And I spoke about it a little bit at EmberConf this year. I did one of the lightning talks. It's primarily the effort of myself and my husband, Phil Gengler. I'll embarrass him over there. So here it is, and you can see all the add-ons are categorized in various things. So you're say you're looking for authentication, you'd go to authentication, and you'd see sorted by default by score. So you'd see the top add-ons. Ember CLI Simple Auth is, I think, appropriately right near the top, as is Tori. And then if you go to a certain add-on, so let's go to Ember Modal Dialog. Here you can see more details about each add-on, the demo URL, going to the repo, and a lot of stats around the add-on. So we get a lot of questions emailed into Ember Observer about the score. I think a lot of people think I'm just randomly assigning numbers. But really, it's trying to be as objective as possible. So if you had explained this, you'll actually see an explanation of the score. I hope I can't tell if it's big enough. 5 points come from the review, which is really more of an audit. And there's things such as the download count in the last 30 days from NPM, the number of stars on GitHub to proxy for popularity, whether there's been a release in the last 3 months to proxy for active development, whether there's more than one contributor to proxy for sustainability. And the review has questions like, are there tests? Is there a README? We're going to rework these questions, and I think I have a little bit in my slide about that. But for instance, I've started marking things without a README as work in progress, because if you don't have a README and I can't tell what your add-on does, I can't categorize it, and I can't tell you what it does, and it's useless to me, in my opinion. That might be a little harsh. As Luke said, I work for, I don't know if Luke said this, but small consulting company called Code All Day, and we have stickers now, so I'm very proud of that. And there's, if anybody wants a sticker that just says Code All Day, it's nice and generic. On Ember Observer, there's currently 1,038 active add-ons. And what is an active add-on? It's an add-on that's not work in progress and is not hidden. So here's a chart. Ooh. All right, 2-year-old laptop. So I made a little chart of our active add-ons. So add-ons can be either what I consider active, hidden, or work in progress. I've hidden some add-ons that are just empty and, in my opinion, just taking up space. There are also lots of hidden Phil Murray add-ons, if anybody has bought that particular book. New thing coming, I think I'm going to start hiding them, is Place Cage. It's the same thing, placing Place Cage. And then work in progress is anything that I've marked as either they explicitly say this add-on is work in progress, don't use this, or it has no documentation at all about what it does. So I've marked them as work in progress. And so we're up to 1038 active, 1467 total on Ember Observer. So going back to my little bit of slides, there's some stats here. I don't know if they're big enough. Ooh, right, I remapped that command. There we go. Someone earlier said, I think one of the talks said Ember add-on score, and that little, got to me a little bit. So it's scores on ember-addons.com are pulled from Ember Observer. There are 554 add-ons that have been reviewed more than once. That means they've released again since their first review. And 108 of those add-ons have had improvement in score. Only 2 lost points, meaning they documentation or test suite. 164 of those were already full points, so they had nowhere to go. So that's pretty great. And I made a chart of the score distribution, which I thought was kind of interesting. So 38 add-ons have a score of 10. And only 3 have a score of 0. 51 have a score of 2, so that's kind of the lowest popular score. Kind of interesting to see, random point. Oops, back to the wrong one. And let's see. Yes. Fill out your package.json, or I'll set my cat on you. That is my cat. 2 of them, actually, both my cats. So some of you may know me because I do pull requests where I set your package repo URL and your package.json. So it'd be really great if you could fill out your maintainer, your repo URL, and a description. The description features prominently both on Ember add-ons and on Ember Observer, and will help people find your add-on. And just a few features that we're working on right now. Working on adding a key to the package.json for version compatibility. So that we can add filtering and sorting based on Ember version compatibility. Ember-try is also mine, and I looked at doing this based on Ember-try's configurations, but that's tricky because they're somewhat automated, and so there's no conscious decision on the part of the maintainer to support a particular Ember version. So I think it would be nice to have a very written-out declaration of, I support this version, I support this version. Unfortunately, with the way package.json is, people tend to lock their dependencies. Otherwise, ideally, we would be able to use the keys in the package.json. But unfortunately, we can't. That's hopefully doing that this week, actually. I'm off between contracts, and that's kind of a nice blessing. Improved categorization. So this month, I'm trying to go through all of the add-ons and form new categories where certain categories have been overwhelmed, or if there have been certain new groups of add-ons created. So a lot of miscellaneous, and because of that, categories emerge from there, like the modals category, and most recently, I think I tried to make an Ember polyfills category for things that are polyfilling future Ember features back to older versions. New review questions to replace the first 2. So in practice, the first 2 questions, which are, is the source accessible and is it not an empty add-on, are silly now that we have the concept of work in progress. So now I just mark those as work in progress, and those 2 questions are always a yes. Possibilities for that are acceptance tests broken out as a separate question. So do you have acceptance tests? Do you have unit tests? Is the package.json filled out / complete? That's my personal favorite. And is there a demo URL? Demo URL might not apply to all add-ons, though. I can't type experimenting, apparently, but we're experimenting with running test coverage on all add-ons, like pulling them down and running blanket against them, and that's been interesting. Advanced search and full text search of readmes. I personally want this for myself, to find add-ons that might have clever names, but not really explain what they do until further into the README. And improve performance. It's kind of slow. And moving to Ember 2 and Ember 1.13 and Ember 2 should help that as well. And one big question is, should we remove or hide old add-ons? So I've been looking through some of the categories to do that recategorization. And I see add-ons that are relatively high scores that are 6 months old. And I question whether they even work if they haven't been released in 6 months. I'm wondering if they should fade away or be removed from category listings to be able to be found just in advanced search and filters. Not too sure what to do about that. That's my last thought. There's a lot of other things that we'd like to do, but I think this is kind of a realistic picture of what we're going to attempt in the next 3-4 months. Any questions?
Questions for Katie? Actually, before I open up, can I just show of hands who uses Ember Observer?
Yay.
All right, awesome. Any questions for Katie? I have a question for you, Katie. Aside from filling out their package JSONs properly, what can people do in the community? What can they do to help? Because this seems like it's probably a lot of work.
Oh, yeah, it's fun side project, but yeah, it is a decent amount of work. So reviewing the add-ons actually doesn't take me that long. It takes about 10 minutes a day to go through the new ones, and I usually get them within 2 to 3 days unless I've gone on vacation. But it is open source on GitHub at ember-observer/client. We haven't open sourced the server side yet, but we do intend to. That's another evil picture of my cat. But yes, a lot of the things would be approachable, and I guess I should try to lay out some issues of things that would be good. We have gotten a couple of, like, I don't know if you know, like unsolicited major PRs that I just don't know what to do with, and so it makes it feel very awkward in the PR section, but I wouldn't let that stop you.
Right, so just for folks, particularly folks who are maybe newer to contributing to open source, this is actually a really good lesson, which is that when a maintainer is maintaining an open source project, they often have an idea of kind of where they want to take the project. And if you show up with a major PR that's not kind of aligned with that vision, it's a sort of awkward situation because they can't really apply the PR without and be compatible with where they envision taking the project. At the same time, they don't want to tell you after you've done all this work, they don't want to, insult you or something like that. So a lot of times it leads to these awkward silences. But so the way to overcome this is to reach out before you do the work on a big PR, is to reach out to the maintainer and say, hey, I'm thinking about this would be really cool for the project. Would you be open to a PR on this? And then you can have a little conversation. The maintainer might ask you what you intend, share a little bit about what he or she envisions for the future, and then you can kind of be more aligned. So quick tangent, but I think a valuable lesson.
On that topic, I'm always in the Ember community Slack, and my name in there is Katie, because there's not a lot of demand for my name.
Cool. Awesome. Well, thanks so much for sharing this, and thanks so much for all of your work on Ember Observer.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to take a short break. During the break, I would challenge you to introduce yourself to somebody here that you haven't met yet. We'll be back in 3 or 4 minutes. Folks, we good with the live stream, Lee? Howdy to the folks at home, to the lady or gentleman in Australia who's watching, and thumbs up to Ember Observer, using Ember Observer. Awesome. Good day, mate, etc. Good Arvo. You guys know that expression, good Arvo? Or Arvo? It's Australian for afternoon. Arvo. All right. So our next speaker is helped work on an add-on that he's going to tell you about. And I think, as Katie would probably tell you from looking at tons and tons of Ember add-ons, there are add-ons, and then there are add-ons. And this is the latter, I can assure you. So with that, to tell us about Ember Calendar, I want to turn it over to Matteo Depalo.
Hi, everyone. My name is Matteo. I work for a company called AlphaSights. I joined the company about 2 years ago, and I managed to sneak Ember in the development process. So now we have a team that is working only on Ember apps. I'm very happy about that. And today I want to talk about Ember Calendar, which is an add-on that the team has recently open sourced. And before I do that, let me talk a little bit about why we decided to build a component to display calendars in all our apps. So at AlphaSights, what we do is we connect our clients with experts that can deliver information that our clients need. And so what happens is our analysts will typically schedule a call between clients and experts. And so just to give you some rough numbers, we schedule about 5,000 calls a month, and we have offices in 4 different time zones. So it's very important that analysts are able to schedule calls quickly and efficiently across different time zones. So one of the problems that we needed to solve was exactly scheduling, showing people if our clients have other events that could block the call and or the advisor. And so this is a screenshot of one of our internal apps used by the rest of the company. And also we have an app that shows a calendar to our clients, and this app will show all the events that our clients might have. And as you can see, it has a small drop-down that allows our clients to switch time zones in case, for example, they may travel and they need to input some events in different time zones. So these were roughly the use cases for our calendar. So at first, we worked on 2 different code bases because these 2 calendars had different kind of uses. And one of the problems, there were 3 main problems with the first implementation of these calendars. First of all, the model of the occurrence was exposed in the apps. So every time we needed to pass in the events, we actually had to wrap all the these events into our big Ember data objects and pass them in, which was quite cumbersome. And then we had one component for every 30 minutes slot. So if you've seen the screenshot here, we have these small slots. And the first implementation that we thought about was when you click on one of these components, it activates, it changes its style, and propagates the logic. But these had performance issues. So we had a very big itch, and then one component per 30 minutes, which caused about 1.5 seconds of rendering time. So this was an issue. And then it was a minor use case, but it became useful. Lately there was no support for events with an arbitrary number of minutes. So since every time slot was its own component, there was no chance to schedule an event, for example, at 7:31. So we worked for about a month and a half on this Ember add-on. And the main features are here listed. So you can click to add events. You can resize them. You can drag and drop. And it's time zone aware. So it has a small drop down. You can click on it. And the events change their position based on the time zone that you select. So I'm going to show it to you straight away. So this is one of the apps that like our analysts use on a daily basis. So here you can see one interaction that our analysts have to schedule, and this side panel opens and it shows the calendar. So as you can see, you can put it anywhere you want. It's kind of independent of wherever you put it. And here there are a couple of events that are blocked. And what the analysts would do was they will click here, add an event, and maybe drag it around or simply remove it. And what's important is that obviously they're not able to overlap. Oh, what's going on? Okay, we're back. They shouldn't overlap with block time slots, and so there is a little bit of validation logic here. Clicking on creating this event also updates this call time, so you can see if I drag and drop, the time changes, and vice versa. If I change the text here and click out, the occurrence just slightly moved. This was for support to support an arbitrary number of minutes. So yeah, this is one of the use cases that we have for our calendar. Also, here you can see I can navigate through weeks, go back to the current week. This is all part of the calendar code that we ship. And here there is this small drop-down will show the time zones that are selectable. In this case, we actually want to show that like a certain time zone corresponds to the advisor time zone. And another one is for the client, and this is actually customizable at the template level, which I will show you later. So going back to the presentation. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about how some architecture choices that we made to make the calendar as like more customizable as possible. So we try to follow as much as possible the data down, actions up paradigm. So you can see here there is the most basic usage of the calendar. So you can declare it as a component. You pass the occurrences in from the outside. So you have a bunch of events, and you bind them to this occurrences property. And then what happens is whenever you click on the calendar or you do something with the event, we send these actions up. So we never mutate the data that you pass in. It's all up to you to what you want to do with the data that the user is fiddling with, basically. And so this is a small example of what we actually do in our app. So we have an array of our events, and whenever someone clicks on the calendar, we validate this event. And the validation is typically it doesn't have to collide with other events, or maybe there are some blocked hours that we don't want to use. And in case the event is valid, we push in the array of our occurrences, which don't change like automatically. There is no two-way binding. So as I was saying, the calendar is highly customizable. And here you can see a more advanced example. You can pass in when the calendar time frame, if you don't want a 24 hours calendar. But more importantly, you can customize how the occurrence looks. So for example, you could see in that calendar, I had a blue occurrence that was the user to edit, and then the other red ones were non-editable. You couldn't interact with them. So we implemented this by having this, by letting the developer pass in the occurrence as a block. And in our case, if the occurrence is editable, we choose a component that allows the user to interact with the event. Otherwise, we choose an occurrence that is non-editable. And also, it has a different styling. So we needed to show blue versus red. The style that you saw is also available in the add-on, although it's more coupled with the design of our apps. But if you want that specific style, you can simply import that with this line. We are like the thing that we want to do next is make the styles more minimal and allow you to use something simple for the grid and for the dropdown so that you can include very basic styles. But the main purpose of this add-on is not really to provide like a full-fledged calendar. It's more to provide a very basic calendars and its primitives so that you can actually apply your own style on top of it. Finally, I wanted to talk a bit about how we did tests. So there was actually a very interesting blog post recently about how to do Ember component integration tests by Alistair McDiarmid. And it showcases a very interesting technique which allows the developer to test components in isolation, but without having to spawn a full-fledged Ember app. So you don't need to visit a page and have the template inside, but actually you can simply say render this template and then check then some things are true, which was a very interesting approach, and we tried to take it. So I can show you one simple test that we have. Let me see if I can zoom. So this is the test to add an occurrence. As you can see, we create an empty array of occurrences, and then we render the most basic calendar that we can insert in the page. And we simply check that at the beginning there is nothing, and then there is this helper select time that actually triggers the click event on the calendar, and you can tell it which day you want and which time slot, and then we check that the occurrence is in the calendar. Together with this, we expose other events, other helpers, that you can use in your app to test the calendar. So if you have a flow in your app that requires calendar input, you can actually use these helpers to test that. And they all use jQuery Simulate behind the scenes. So they will trigger drag and drop events or resize event, click and drag events. So yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Matteo, how are you doing the time zone stuff? Like, are you using a library or just?
Yeah, so we use Moment Time Zone to do the calculations, and then what we do is we simply change the starting time of the calendar, and then everything else updates automatically.
Cool. Other questions for Matteo? I have a question for you. Did you run into any performance issues during the development of the add-on? Any problems like that you had to overcome?
Yeah, so as I was saying in the beginning, the main performance issue was that we had one component per time slot, and we improved that by simply not having a component per time slot, but rather what you see in the calendar when the calendar is empty is just a grid that is styled in CSS. Mm-hmm. And then we add components only when there are events. So all the events that you see, those are components, but otherwise we simply style everything in CSS with positionings, absolute positionings, basically.
Cool. Yeah. Good stuff. Well, it looks fantastic, and thank you so much for open sourcing it.
Yeah.
Thanks for telling us about it.
Thank you.
right. So while our next speaker is getting ready, I have a question for you all. What I'd like you to do is to raise your hand if you, raise your hand and keep it raised if you have an app with Ember data in production that you've developed. Okay? And now keep it raised if you have an app with Ember CLI in production, if you developed, raise your hand. If you have an app that uses Ember in production that you've built, raise your hand also. Now, put your hand down if you've ever upgraded either Ember, Ember Data, or Ember CLI. Okay, so a couple of people have new apps maybe, but most of you have gone through an upgrade process, which means that, and we'll go through more in the future, I'm sure, which I think means that you are the right audience for our next talk. Our next speaker needs no introduction, really, but he does need AV to work. Seems to be coming. We got a thumbs up in the back. Awesome. Okay. So I am going to introduce our next speaker anyway, because if you don't know all of the amazing things that this gentleman does for the Ember community, you should. He has his own beer channel. What does that mean? So many people offer to buy this gentleman a beer as a minute gesture of thanks for what he does to support Ember and support, by extension, their apps. That there's a dedicated Buy RWJ Blue a Beer channel in the Ember community Slack. But in all seriousness, from the time that RWJ Blue has joined the Ember core team and started contributing to the community, the way that we've done releases, the way that we've, the speed at which we've moved has been all moving in the positive direction. And in addition to that, he's really been fantastic at helping to mentor new contributors, always willing to jump on a quick hangout, give some feedback on some code or an approach, and help really people be successful in their ability to contribute to the community. So I couldn't be happier to have as our main talk speaker tonight, my friend Robert Jackson.
He says that having not seen any of the material that I have, so don't hold it against him. So he already asked you guys, how many of you have had to do upgrades? How many of you have enjoyed that process, right? We didn't ask that one, did we? How many have enjoyed the process of upgrading? There are for those online, there are actually hands in the air. So that's good. All right, so a little bit about me. Luke said most of this. I'm on the Ember core team. I work at Aptable. We make an awesome deployment platform for healthcare apps. We offer essentially a way for you to deploy apps that have HIPAA compliance, and we manage all that for you in a very similar environment to what many of y'all are used to deploying to. So just git push, and we can take care of it. So it's great. You should talk to us, grab one of us later. Mostly the other guys, because I just started, but. I also do way too much open source. I am addicted to it. I love making things better, hopefully making things better, not worse. I love helping people understand how to do that themselves, so I have to do less. So this is great. I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for these people. These are my wife and kids. I literally could not do any of the things that I do without the support from them. So I also haven't seen them for like 2 weeks. So okay, so first question is, why change what already works? Why go through the massive changes that sort of 2.0 requires? We completely replaced the rendering engine in 1.13. We deprecated many, many things. Why do that? What's the point? I think the point is basically that if we don't do it, Ember will die. We will no longer be able to use it. It won't continue to innovate. It won't be the best thing out there for what we're trying to do. the whole point, one of the primary sort of foundations of what Ember's doing is that, we try to grab what's best out there and accumulate it and provide it and make it easy for developers to consume and use. If we didn't continue learning and we didn't continue innovating, Ember as a project would die. You guys would all be doing other things, and we wouldn't be here, and that would make me very sad. So that's the why, in my opinion. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what Matt Beal, who's not here with us tonight, but Matt named stick, carrot, and oops. Essentially, the stick is the major version upgrades. Like basically, we're going to remove features, or not features, hopefully. We're going to remove old legacy code and make things better, improve the object model, improve the process, and continue moving forward. The carrot is basically where during the minor versions, we're adding new features, we're adding things that you want to use. There's been a ton of examples. HTML bars offered you the ability to use binding attributes in HTML syntax instead of bind adder, for example. Query primes were added in a minor release. All of those things were major efforts, but we added them in minor versions, continuing to maintain compatibility. And that's the incentive, hopefully, for people to want to stay on the sort of upgrade path and continuing to move forward. And oops is basically where we messed up, where something wasn't as solid as we thought it would be. We have to do a patch release. We've had a few oopses in the 113 cycle, and I would be lying if I told you I didn't think there would be at least a few more oopses that we find. So, all right, so we've been through this major release cycle before. We went through 1.0. It was a lot of effort. Thankfully, I wasn't doing much of it. Many of y'all in the room were around at that point and were working on Ember just before 1.0. I got involved right at the 1.0 timeframe. But there's a whole bunch of stuff that we learned during that process. We learned that, so some of the things that we did in the 1.0 release candidate and just prior timeframe, we added flags. So we changed some foundational things about the way the framework works, like the view context, or the router I think was changed a couple of times, things like that. And well, we gave you the ability to use the old thing or use the new thing with a flag that you can enable for your app. Unfortunately, that doesn't work. So that basically means that you fragmented your user base between using the old thing and the new thing. And most things require an incremental upgrade path. For example, with the view context shifting, you had to audit and review all your templates to determine whether you're using the right context. This context in the template changed. So during that cycle, you had one flag for your entire app to change the context for everything. And if you had more than like 5 templates, that was going to be a problem. You couldn't go through and audit every template you had at once. So that was pretty bad. Just shortly after the 1.0 cycle, we sort of sat down and thought about what worked well, what didn't work well, and try to make a plan. So we decided that we were going to try, instead of these flags, these long-lived flags, we're going to try to only do things that we can support both ways and deprecate the old way. So essentially there's one happy path, there's one thing that we think you should do, and make it extremely clear that you know what that is. So I think that has both positive and negative, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But I think that overall, it has led us to a very clear model of what it means to have an idiomatic Ember app. And that has changed quite a lot since 1.0 to 1.15, 1.10, and current. But it's very clear at each of those points what was idiomatic, because what wasn't was deprecated, and you had warnings and whatnot. We also figured out that adding features at the last minute was extremely painful. So for example, in the 1.0 cycle, we added components. We added the router both in the RC and the release candidate stage, as some of the later release candidates. We added the Ember testing library, which is awesome and wonderful, but had, in my opinion, many bugs. We changed the way actions worked. We changed the name of actions, thank you, Luke, from events to actions. I know, I remember. We landed array computed and reduce computed just days before 1.0 was released. It didn't even end up in a release candidate at all. So all of those things were like rushed through, like we need these things, this is 1.0, and we have to have this, this mental model, this programming model for it to succeed. I think we, at the time, probably most people involved, and hindsight is always 20/20, I think would say that that was not the right call. The right thing to do would be is what we do now, we have a canary and beta cycle, we have time for things to shake out, figure out what works, what doesn't work, etc. So unfortunately, the last cycle or so, we've been putting much of the development through directly into beta and hasn't had a lot of shakeout in Canary because bugs exist, so we have to fix them quickly. But expect us to get back to a much longer process, normal process for Canary in beta. So the other thing that we did was we had this extraction. There was at least 1 or 2 things that were extracted. The ones that come to mind for me are the old router. There was a way that was extracted from the code base. There was a way for you to use it with 1.0, even though there wasn't the thing shipping with it. Another one was the either Ember States or Ember State Manager. Can't remember the exact name, but one of those, we'll find it. Those were removed from the code base, but made add-ons, or well, we didn't have add-ons at the time, but they were made like standalone JavaScript files that you could pull in and use. So if your app was utilizing them, you could still continue upgrading, you could still stay on the happy path, but it wasn't in the base project and it wasn't required for everyone to use it. So I think that actually worked really, really well. So we moved off of Ember States pretty quickly. Those that needed it could have it. I think people still actively use it today, and I think that's great. It does serve a purpose, and I think that's a good thing. So we tried to learn from just these and many other scenarios for the 2.0 cycle. So hopefully we can do the same retrospective in a couple of months when all of our hair grows back. Okay, so none of this is actually telling you about how to do upgrades or smoother upgrades. It's really just me meandering and chatting. So let's talk about upgrades. All right, so upgrades are really simple, right? All you have to do is change the Bower JSON, update the Ember version, and Bower install, of course. Well, you might need to non-bomb because you need to like clear all your cache because package managers are great. And then just fix up the stuff, no big deal, and then you're done. No big, merge the PR, you're done. Little hand wavy there. So that's it. Simple, right? All right, that's it on the top. All right, so the steps are right. Upgrade, fix your stuff, and then you're done, sure. But the fix your stuff part might be a little bit more involved than one little bullet point. So I'm going to talk about a couple of the things. I'm using the app our work app, which is an open source app. It's a pretty substantial one. And it's great for demos, and you'll see it's got a ton of tests, and it's been great for me to sort of prove out the concept and ideas that I'm going to show here. But while upgrading that app, we found a few problems. First of all, any component unit test that we had to be, any test that used like bound values provided in the template had to be upgraded from the old sort of component unit test style where you say this.subject and pass in some values, and then you'd inspect them. They had to be upgraded to the new style integration tests, which I actually find to be much better. Unfortunately, there's not enough documentation about it. I would love for anybody to come grab me and talk to me about it. I will explain absolutely everything there is to know about how to do it if you will write about it. It's not terribly difficult. I can walk you through a couple, and I will have some examples. But the idea is that the test you move away from the this.subject and pass a POJO, and you move towards actual template invocation. So you'd say this.render, and you pass a handlebar snippet of how exactly you're going to invoke your template and move along. So it's much closer to resembling what you really do in your app, and that's great. And I'll have some resources for that later. The next gotcha that took me quite a while to figure out, and I only figured out a workaround, I did not fix it. It is an Ember bug. And essentially, if you have setter CPs that are bound in the template, the upstream of the CP doesn't get updated properly when you update the value. So if you have a component that manages an input, and it itself is passed a value, and then it has an input that it passes down, if that thing has a setter, you're going to have a really bad time. I'll show a commit where I fixed that in our app. You can kind of steal the idea. But it's really bad, and we should absolutely fix it. But the smart people that work on Ember need to fix it, not me. The last one that was a little bit of a sticky wicket that took a little while to figure out was the transition from view select to just writing your own select component. Now that's quite easy, actually, with the more recent improved action syntax. And it's a lot easier to understand as well. So the view, the select view syntax is kind of old school, and it's a little hard to grok. Some of the option label paths and option value paths, and what is selection versus value? Which one do you want to use? I hope somebody else knows, because I actually don't. So those are some things. I'm gonna show you. I think, yeah, maybe. All right. So this was the. Let me make this big and begin. So this is the easy upgrade part, right? This is done. We're done. Ship it. All right. I'll stop fooling around. Okay, so this is how we changed from the unit test syntax to the integration test syntax. It's pretty straightforward. I'll link this PR. It's out there. You guys can look at it. But we upgraded the precompiler. This particular add-on, the Ember-CLI HTML bars inline precompile, allows you to precompile your handlebars snippets that are in your test files without actually embedding the template compiler to run in the browser. I've had a number of times where I have accidentally, for testing purposes, included the template compiler, and then my production build just didn't work because I didn't deploy with it. So it's way better to just not try to app import the Ember template compiler. Just use this add-on. It works wonderfully, and it replaces the template string. The tag template string that you use, it replaces it with the compiled template output. It's great. It's wonderful. Okay, so here's the update to the new syntax. You can see. Let me put it to side-by-side mode. I don't know if that's better, but whatever. So we switched the unit true flag to integration. Integration true is actually the default for the current version of Ember QUnit. You don't have to specify it. I find it very useful to specify it because I've been tripped up a few times where it's accidentally been in the wrong mode or the mode I didn't expect it to be. So you move away from the this.subject invocation like this. You move towards a this.render call, and you pass it handlebar syntax. You're not supposed to have to invoke it like a function. However, this worked better in our scenario. You generally would leave that out. You'd say HBS backtick template. There's extenuating circumstances here, but it works fine. It works exactly the same either way. This is consequently how you would do it in CoffeeScript, because the tag template expressions, the backticks signify plain JavaScript, I think, in CoffeeScript. But don't use CoffeeScript. So we changed the way we grab the input. This $$ is now the parent component of, or the parent element of all of the stuff. It's not terribly different than what we did before. It's just you don't have a component that has its own element. This is all the same. We then changed to get the value, the resulting value, out. So the idea of this particular component is it's sanitizing input. So people can type. We're going to make sure that we remove non-allowed characters. And that's all it's doing. So you'll see I pass in a thing with a space, and then it returns a thing with a dash, right? That's all it's doing. So it's really straightforward. You can see in the transition, it's basically the same test. It's not that different. It's just slightly different invocation. Again, the thing that I like the most is that you're actually invoking the template like you are actually going to do in reality, as opposed to sort of like pretend that it's going to work the same way. Well, it's not the same. So especially when you get into bound values, changing from the outside, and the way the cascading the new view component hooks actually fire. So with the old style test, it's impossible to actually get the new hooks to fire. You can't do did receive adders because there's no adders, for example. Okay, so that's basically that. There's just a bunch of these tests, but they're all roughly the same. Okay. I found a bug that I fixed. All right, so this was the gnarly bug that I was telling you about. It took me quite a long time to make that one line change. I'm not terribly proud of it, but it does work, and it passes all the tests, so ship it. But I am trying to get some help from some Yehuda and Tom about actually fixing the bug in Ember. It's unlikely to be a thing that you're probably going to hit a ton, but if you are using centered CPs, be aware that there is a problem. Okay, so this one is very interesting. This is a conversion from a component that has a view select in it. This just shows a way that I replaced it. So essentially, you see this was the old curly view select with the old parameters. I replaced it with a regular select element and added an action for when it changed, and then an each. Very, very simple. I find this to be massively easier to reason about. I don't have to worry about the magic inside of Ember, and Ember select is the devil. Whether you believe in the devil or not, doesn't matter. Okay, so up here, what I did here was I implemented a couple of the new hooks, or one of the new hooks, to remove this particular observer. And this hook gets called did init adders. Gets called when your component is after it's initialized and after it's been provided new attributes. So it technically is not guaranteed to be at the init call time. It can be subsequent. That's why this hook exists. So when did init adders happens, I just populate. I select the first item in the database if there's any databases, because it's a dropdown. I want to make sure the first one is pre-selected. And then I implemented the change action, which just grabs the selected item, figures out the database, and then bubbles it up, sends the action out to say select a new database. So it's all pretty simple. Okay, so that's it, right? I can tell you that that's not quite it. So the app works. Like this is the app. It works. Hopefully it's not going to troll me. Yes, it works great. Let me make sure I have this set right. So I just refreshed, and I get 236 deprecations on the homepage, essentially. Most of these, I'll tell you, are just Ember data. Every time a new model is instantiated, it deprecates ember.keys and ember.create. But it's extremely annoying, and I cannot tell you the things that I have heard from people about these deprecations. So what are the lessons that we've learned from the process we've gone so far to 2.0? We haven't reached 2.0 final yet. We're still in the we have 2 more betas most likely that are going to happen, probably a week and a half out. Some of the things that we learned are deprecations are painful to people. It seems pretty obvious, both at the time we were doing it and in retrospect. It seems very obvious that that is true. But at the same time, deprecations are also very helpful. It tells you exactly what you need to do, or hopefully, if it's a good deprecation, it tells you exactly what you need to do to get rid of it and to move forward and be ready for 2.0. The alternative would be to not add deprecations in 1.13 and just remove support for things in 2.0, and good luck. That would be horrible. That would be way worse than trying to figure out by these messages that we've tried to print to the console about how to fix it. That would be way worse. So deprecations are a pain point, but I think they're also a good thing and a benefit. I do think that we found that the template compilation deprecations, even though they're in the console, and that's slightly more annoying to scroll through, they give you exact line number of the invocation in the template, and that's much more helpful and actionable than some of the deprecations we do in the browser, like in computed and stuff like that, where it's extremely hard to figure out which specific thing is calling controller needs, or which, well, that's a bad example, but which specific thing might be passing the wrong order of arguments to an observer or something like that. So we're looking to do more things like that going forward. Hopefully, actually, for the JavaScript files as well. So just like we are precompiling templates, if you're using Ember CLI, we're actually precompiling your JavaScript. There are I believe there are things we can do in Ember CLI to provide much more actionable, possibly automated in some cases, like Ember Watson style upgrades for some invocations, like needs in a controller to just replace that with Ember inject. It's a very straightforward transition, and it's almost mechanical. So I think that's definitely a thing that we've learned and we can do better. And I think that everyone sort of feels that. Okay, so back to these deprecation things. Yeah, so I've heard that. So I can't work. This sucks. I've heard that, actually. Cool, makes me feel good. Yep, really hate you. So that's great. What can we do better to make that better? The problem that I see may or may not be the actual problem, but this is what I tried to go about figuring out a way to fix. The problem is that you have, and in the app I just showed, you had 238 or something deprecations on just one page, and like no clue what to do. You just have this swamp of crazy messages, and it's scrolling by so fast you can't even read it. You've tried to put a console log somewhere to debug some other thing that's unrelated to deprecations, you're going to lose it. It's gone. It's very, very painful. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some other things that we have been working on in the meantime. So we have an RFC where we proposed a new concept, a new way to have deprecation handlers. I'll link all these in the slides and we'll circulate them. You don't need to read this. Essentially, it's just a way to plug in from a tooling perspective via public API, a way to plug into deprecations and deal with them. Ember itself doesn't support, this is not in 1.13, but it is in 2.1, or hopefully will be in 2.1. And that's, I think, a good thing. It allows things like the inspector to do some really awesome things. For example, I envision the inspector being able to, in the deprecations pane, you click on a deprecation and click a button like focus or something, and have that deprecation throw an error, and you just get a breakpoint at that spot. For just that one deprecation, not all of them, just that one. I think that that's fairly straightforward to do, given this tool. It's also going to be possible. Another requirement for this deprecation is to add two fields. They're down here somewhere. An ID and the property for until. So the idea is the intent is for it to be a unique identifier for that deprecation. Sometimes you have the same deprecation that's actually triggered in 2 or 3 spots, so those would share the ID because they're the same thing. Like maybe object controller proxying. That's actually deprecated in 2 or 3 spots, so that might be the same deprecation ID. The other flag is for until. Now, I have gone around in a circle a few times, but let me tell you the way you should read until. Until is, the way to think about it is that you can use the thing that's being deprecated until that number version. So when you hit 3.0, don't expect the thing that this is deprecating to work. That's pretty simple. It seems straightforward to me when you read until. This thing exists until that number. Pretty straightforward. So those are actually added. We had a big issue in Ember where we audited every deprecation. There were a lot of them. And we added ID and we added until to every single deprecation invocation And those IDs and until values will land in 2.0 so that it'll be extremely clear when you get a deprecation whether this thing is going to go away soon. Now, why do you care if until is there? You're not going to go look at the source code. Well, the thing that can happen here is that tooling can plug into this, and it can say, hey, silence all deprecate. Like you can tell the inspector, don't show me any deprecations in the deprecations pane that are for a version that are not for the next version or something like that. You know, I don't need to see, it's 2.0. 3.0 is like a while. It better be a while. I don't need to see those things. I don't need to deal with them today. They're not my problem today. Let me deal with the things that I have to deal with right now and then move forward. So that's the idea with until. And I think that's one of the things that the tooling can plug into. This particular RFC is sort of new for us. It's not a user-facing feature. This is a tooling feature, but it's still public API. And I consider the until values to be public API just as much as the actual things that they're deprecating. So if we say 3.0 and it's released in a stable version, then it better damn well be 3.0 when it's removed. So that's good. Now, what are we actually going to do about these 32,612 deprecations from the test suite of this app? That's pretty bad. It's very annoying, actually. So, oh, and by the way, if you close the console and reopen it, it just hides them all, but like 900 of them. So you think, oh, it's only 900, no big deal. But yeah, don't fool yourself. So I built the thing. Matt Beal and I built the son of a. Thanks, Chrome. We built the thing yesterday, and so you see these deprecations. I don't think it'll zoom. It does. See this? This is great, right? It's like you can kind of see where you're at in the test. You know it's going to get to 32,000. It's a really nice progress meter, right? All right. Where'd all those deprecations go? All right, so the thing that we built was a Ember CLI deprecation workflow add-on that you install. The idea is that it polyfills the new RFC that we just talked about, polyfills it back to essentially all versions of Ember because it just overrides the ember.deprecate function, so it should work back to pre-1.0. And it provides a function that you can call to then generate a file for you that is used to list the deprecations that you want to silence or log or throw or whatever. It has those three verbs. I will show you this file. The file is very, very simple. It is a handler, which is silence, throw, or log, and then a message to match. The message can either be the exact string or regex. Some of the deprecation messages include like object IDs and UUIDs that are incremented. So you don't want to obviously match every string possible. So you can use a regex like down here. So the idea here is those 32,000 messages are all initiated by one of these 12 or 13 things. This list is much more manageable. I can deal with this. I can continue developing features. 113 passes all my tests. I should be able to deploy that, and I should be able to develop against it, and it's fine. Now, I need to fix those deprecations before I upgrade to 2.0 because the whole idea is that some of those things are going to be removed. But at least now you can land a PR that updates to 113, and you can make sure that the rest of your coworkers or you don't have to deal with all those log messages, and you can deal with one at a time. So the sort of suggested workflow is that you change one of these from silence to throw, and you deal with it. You fix it. You figure it out. It may suck. It may be hard, and it may. I'm not saying it's going to be any easier to do, but at least you can do them in isolation relatively. The other thing that's a really huge factor for me is you can make sure you don't get worse. So right now, if you have 32,000 deprecations, are you going to notice one more that you just introduced in a new feature you added? I guarantee you won't. So what you can do now is with this add-on, you can add a flag that says raise on unhandled deprecations. And it will raise, similar to an old environment flag that's been around for a while, but it'll raise if it receives the deprecations not in this list, this workflow list. So you can make sure that, in CI, you can test to make sure you're not introducing new deprecations that haven't been managed or haven't been at least looked at and eyeballed. So you're not going to introduce new things that are bad. So this add-on's out there. You should be able to use it. It should work for both apps and for add-ons. There are a number of things that need to be fixed. I have tried to add issues. Would love help on them. But the biggest one, probably to prevent folks from using it immediately, other than to start upgrading, is the fact that it's still included in production builds. It's really simple to fix. I just haven't done it yet. I think the first commit on this was last night at 11:30 or so. It took a long time to land all the other things that needed to happen before this. But that's basically it. Now, how did the question is, how did I get this list? That probably would suck if you had to go through the console and copy them. So what we did was, let me go to this one. I gotta find the bottom of the console. There we go. So there's this function you invoke, and it spits out exactly the thing you should copy and paste. Now I realize that's really sucky UX, but it's a lot better than tracking it down yourself. And there's an issue. We can make this way better. We can post back to a middleware that we run in Ember-CLI and have it write the file for you, things like that. It's really trivial to do. It's more that I wanted the core functionality to exist before trying to make it fancy and pretty. Okay. All right, so I had slides for these things. So here's some URLs. I'll publish these slides and tweet them. But this is basically where we implemented them, where we added ID and until for both Ember and Ember Data. There are, I think the Ember Data PRs are still pending, but they should land and they should be released in the 113X branch, the next one. And that's it.
Questions for Robert about upgrading? Can we open it up to more general questions too? Is that okay with you?
You can ask me anything you want. I reserve the right to say no.
All right, is an Ask Me Anything with Robert Jackson.
I'm going to take a seat.
First, Robert, thank you so much. However number of beers I already owed you, I owe you another one. Okay. I just wanted to ask, how do you propose we handle all the issues of the deprecation guides that are missing right now? We've got a whole lot of deprecations in the 1.13.x series that are missing from the guides, and it's one of the difficulties of upgrading has been we see a deprecation warning and we don't really know what to do. It turns out it was so simple once we find out what to do. But because there wasn't a guide that said, hey, replace your needs with Ember Inject, we didn't know.
Well, in that case, the deprecation message actually does say exactly that thing. But your point is totally valid. Two or three things. Firstly, we need to be much, much more diligent about when we land a deprecation that there's a guide PR already ready. It's not actually to the guides repo, it's to the website repo because deprecations span versions, which is a whole other story. And that's actually part of the confusion. People that are adding these things don't necessarily know where to put it. It's not a very good excuse, but it's a factor. So that's one thing. The second thing is I would love it if someone would ask me about a deprecation they're having a problem with. And if you are willing to do the documentation, I will tell you exactly what to do to fix it. I'm really bad at writing docs, but I love helping people. So if we can figure out an arrangement between those two things, I think that'd be great.
Other questions over here? Let me go back and come back up.
Okay, so I have two. So one is, so that was a revelation to me that you would actually just update the Bower JSON. I thought that the process was to go through Ember CLI init and then scrub through a pile of stuff.
Yeah, so there's two totally different things there. So one, you can upgrade Ember CLI. Absolutely, you can do that. That's a good idea. You should totally stay up to date. But updating Ember CLI is nothing to do with updating Ember. Ember CLI, the current version of Ember CLI works with every single version of Ember that we've published ever, right? All it's doing is concatenating things to your vendor file. That's it. The things that may or may not work going back to 1.0 is some of the like generated like template like blueprints, but that's not what we're talking about. But so Ember itself is a totally different beast than Ember CLI. They are paired. The idea is that they should share version numbers so everyone is not confused.
Right. But if you're on Ember,
I feel like that's actually more
110
confusion,
and
but
Ember CLI
that's I don't want to
115.
start dissension in the core team.
Okay, so the other thing was, I think it's called LCS. Is that the
LTS, yeah.
LTS. Can you speak, like, where is that at? And I assume it's related, but.
Yeah, so a couple of things. First of all, for those of you that may not be aware, there's an RFC that's been proposed that it adds, essentially talks about the process for long-term support versions of Ember. It's a little bit different than other things that use the term LTS, which is why I'm sort of opposed to the term LTS, but not the idea of the thing proposed there. So the thing being proposed is that essentially private APIs that are deprecated in point release cannot be removed until an LTS release, right? That obviously goes for public APIs too, but public APIs have a much stricter rule, and they can't be removed to the next major version. But they certainly can't be removed in a minor release. So that's the basic idea of it. There are some language and tweaks that I think need to happen. There's also some work that I think needs to be done in the build pipeline of Ember and Ember CLI to make things that are talked about in there done. What I believe will happen, most likely, is that we'll sort of, after 2.0, hopefully dust settles, I get like more than 3 hours of sleep in a row, we can actually talk about the real things that need to happen to land that PR, that RFC. I don't think it's really sort of high level. It doesn't talk about very, very specific things that are done. Other than that, it gives rules and guidelines for you as an app developer to know, hey, if I don't want to deal with this upgrade thing every 6 weeks, then I can wait till the next LTS release, which is the idea is it would be every 4 or 3 Ember versions. So it'd be roughly 3 months, 4 months, and just upgrade those. And I know that there'll be a specific changelog talking about the combined upgrade, like the combined list of things, the like release notes, the things you should be aware of if coming from 2.0 to 2.4. You'll also know that you don't have to go from 2.0 to 2.1 to 2.2 to 2.3 to 2.4, which is quite painful also, especially because each of those versions probably introduce some bug somewhere that you'll waste time figuring out, just upgrade again. So that's the sort of idea. I have no clue if I answered your question, but I believe that it'll absolutely happen. It is sort of fundamental to the pain we're feeling now. Just like at 1.0, we felt the pain of adding too much crap at the end, and it was really painful. It wasn't fully baked. It wasn't shaken out yet. So we added this infrastructure, the beta canary process after that. We're going to do exactly the same thing. I guarantee it. No, that's totally fine. I will say though that if for those of you that were around in the early 1.0 cycle, 1.0 was a pain in the butt. 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, 1.4, 1.5, 1.6, 1.7 were all relatively straightforward upgrades, all of them. We started landing major features that were destined for 2.0 in the 1.8, 1.9, 1.10 cycles. So I think there'll be sort of what I'm going to call a honeymoon period again. And there'll be less deprecations. Certainly, we'll be thinking a lot harder about them. Hopefully, we've added the tools that make it so when we deal with this again, we're in a much, much better position. For example, that ID and until thing was going to mean that you have the ability to like really zone in on those things that you have to deal with, and not on the things you don't have to deal with. That's the idea. Yep.
Yeah, so I've also upgraded my application to Ember CLI.
Yep.
And there's this one deprecation, which is giving me problems. They should reload all. So I went on to Stack Overflow. Someone posted like a solution. But the thing is that I tried to implement the solution and still I couldn't make it get away. It seems we just have to set true in the application adapter. But as I try to set it true, it still shows in the console.
Well, there could, a couple of things. It could be multiple adapters, and you have to set it up in each. It's possible. It's also possible that it's extending from the wrong thing that it expects it to. Maybe it's still extending from like REST adapter instead of JSON API adapter or something like that. There could be a bunch of different things. I do suggest that you hop into the Slack channel for Ember Data and talk to them about it. I will happily talk about it. I have no idea about the answer right now.
Okay, sure. Thank you.
Run, Luke, run.
Yeah, I just had a question about how the core team is thinking about kind of the community going forward, because for us, the upgrade cycle isn't as painful or that painful even really. With Ember itself, it's everything surrounding it. So there are some add-ons. I mean, we maintain a number of add-ons, and they're actually kind of in varying states. Some are right up to date, and some of them are a couple versions back. And I think that happens with everyone where you realize you're a couple versions back, so rather than try to version each one up, you just because of trying to figure out I have a limited amount of time, I'm going to leapfrog this from 1.9 to 1.12 or something like that. And I think there's a lot of times that you get yourself into a state where you've upgraded to a state where some of your add-ons just aren't supported in the current version you're on, and maybe they are in future versions and past versions. So I'm just wondering, kind of going forward, how does the core team thinking about managing that, especially with the fact that, I mean, it's great that add-ons are just proliferating, but it's probably going to become more so in the future.
Sure. I'm going to do the standard caveat that I am not the Ember core team. I am on the Ember core team. I may be a very opinionated member of the Ember core team, but I can't speak for everybody. I'm going to try to dissect the question slightly, if that's okay. I won't deflect it, but I'll try to dissect. The first thing, the fact that many people are relying on libraries that they didn't have to write is an absolutely wonderful thing. That didn't exist in 1.0, didn't exist in 1.6 or 7 or 8. This is a new thing, right? It's only existed in the last maybe year, I don't know. So I came down here actually and talked about add-ons when they first were a thing. It wasn't that long ago, maybe a year ago. So it's a new problem, and we're not really that great at it yet, as you know. There's the next part, in a little less hand-wavy, is that part of the LTS RFC that he asked about over there talks about add-ons using private APIs. From my perspective, the only reason an add-on should not be able to upgrade from a version to the next minor version is if they're using private APIs. If they're using public APIs and there's no path forward, then we have broken, right? We have broken the Ember contract. That is bad. I'm not saying that it's never happened, and I'm not saying that I'm not even aware of the times that it has happened, but I'm saying that it's bad, and we should try extremely hard not to do it, and I think we do try hard not to do it. So that being said, things that are not possible via public API should be opened up as, and you have to use private APIs for it, should be opened up as an issue, not a pull request, an issue on the RFC's repo to start a conversation, figure out, hey, is this thing a legit use case? Does someone else know of a better way to do it that is public, or whatever? There was a number of examples that happened in the 1.13 early beta cycle where we totally changed the way helpers worked. And things like Dockyard's easy form got kind of left in the dust. It was written in an era of sort of 1.0. It wrote handlebars helpers that invoked other helpers and components. And those are things you can't do anymore. Those were also things that were never public API, but that doesn't really help anybody saying that, right? So the the thing that we discovered was that there were a number of these add-ons, or a number of add-ons that were geared as helpers. There was like an Ember Can project, there was a Get Helper project. All of these projects were doing things that were innovative and really awesome and not supported by the way we designed the new Glimmer rendering engine to work. So we worked pretty hard to get new style, like a top-level public API for helpers, and actually backported it to the release version because of this breakage, right? I'm not saying we fixed every scenario, but we did fix many. We took the Get Helper, which was a thing that was written to allow you to get dynamic properties off of an object, both bound, and we pulled it in internally because it couldn't be written without private APIs, so we decided to embed it in Ember itself. So those are examples. It's not the rule, but that's the rule is if there is private API that you have to use to do a thing, and there's no public way to do it, then you should absolutely raise an issue, then we can figure out. Maybe there is a public way to do it, and you just don't know it. Maybe there isn't one, and we never thought about it, right? That's the beauty of the community. We can move better. We can move forward together. Were there other parts of the question? Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll also mention a project that Robert and I worked together on, Ember CLI version checker, which is a useful tool for add-on authors to be able to conditionally do one thing or another in their add-on kind of compilation steps, depending on what version of Ember is targeted by the app. And that I know was, for us, was a blocker in figuring out how do we get Ember modal dialog to support multiple versions of Ember.
Right, and just to dovetail, so basically what that does is it lets you check the version of Ember that's running in the given app and return totally different templates in the modal dialog case. You could do anything. You could return a different app tree. You could return anything, actually. So there's a few add-ons, actually, that I use that in subsequently to upgrade as I worked on other, our app and other apps, getting them up on 113. I think it's a really useful tool. It kind of is not great, but people want to be able to use the latest version of an add-on and have it work for their version of Ember. Tools like Liquid Fire have had to make the hard choice to basically have a hard compatibility matrix like Ember Liquid Fire 0.20 or some version, I don't know, only supports Glimmer. It doesn't support, it only supports 113 plus. It doesn't support maybe 112. That means if you're on a 112 app and you, Ember install Liquid Fire, you're going to get a thing that doesn't work for you. And I think that's kind of horrible. We should totally fix that. I think we can fix it in a number of ways. One great example is what Katie suggested with Ember Observer, and like sort of have better compatibility matrices. That's one great way. Another way would be something in the tooling that lets it figured out. Once we decide what the way to declare the supporting versions are, maybe Ember CLI can be a little bit smarter about the thing it actually installs. Things like that. All of those things are possible, and I think are things that we can easily do to make the path forward better.
More other questions for Robert?
I can do this all night, folks. I did run out of beer, though.
Hi. So in my organization, our development is on Windows, unfortunately, not on Linux or.
Slightly sorry, but it's cool.
I'm very sorry for myself. Since I mentioned that you're very aware of all the problems we face versus if we were developing on a Mac or anything else, is there anything in the roadmap to improve that process? Because I know they're not.
So a lot of the problems. So let me separate two things. The first one is Ember supports Windows just fine, right? You can run Chrome in Windows, works great. Ember CLI is a different story. It does work. It's much, much slower. Most of the issues in Ember CLI's build with Windows it's not going to help. It's not directly Ember CLI's fault. Things that are fundamental to the Node ecosystem that have to be fixed, like libuv. Ray Tiley's been doing a great job. Really, like every time there's a Windows issue, I ping Ray and he's in there trying to figure out and help. We have Windows CI that Ember CLI runs against. So every build, every PR of Ember runs and makes sure that it passes Ember CLI's test suite in Windows. So I absolutely understand that it sucks, but I also am not really sure the specific things that we can do to make it better. We need people that have expertise, like Ray, hopefully like your organization, to jump in and like say, hey, this is the pain point. Look, you can do this thing. Or like, we don't know the things that we can, I don't know the things that we can make better. you know, but you all might. You might have expertise. You've been dealing with this, right? So we're absolutely open to, you know, PRs, patches, issues, comments, mentions, like what can we do better? We want to make it better. I want it to be a wonderful experience for every user. I don't know how to do that though. So that's the issue.
I'll also add to that in previous clients of Yap Labs, for example, and I know other consultancies have funded us at various points for a couple of days to like work on this problem, and other kind of problems in the ecosystem. But if you think about, you know, the size of your development team and the amount of productivity you're losing, and there's some actionable things that can get done just given somebody to do it, going out and finding an expert to dig in is a great path for that.
Yeah, and again, I'll reiterate, like I really want it to be better. Like I'm not sitting up here saying I don't want your team to run faster. It's a thing we definitely want. I just don't have the expertise, and there's not as many people with expertise in the Ember-CLI community because, you know, we're Linux or Mac. Most people deploy to different environments, like a Linux environment or something like that too. So, but definitely would love just suggestions, advice, tell us what's wrong, that kind of stuff. Don't say you hate me, because I don't like that.
I have a question about the logistics of doing the upgrade that I think maybe would be helpful to folks. So let's say you've got your deprecations list and you're going through and you track down one of them, but it's not in your code. It's in an add-on.
Yep.
What do you do?
So what do I do, or what do you do? Or what do they do?
Your Ember developer.
So a couple of things. Firstly, before you even get to that point, you are almost certainly going to run into an issue where the default stack trace that's printed is too short. So you're going to need to make the stack trace longer. The way you do that is by setting error.stack trace limit. That's what it is. And you set the stack trace limit. By default, it's 10 stack frames, and it only shows those. Oftentimes, I found while doing this work, while doing other upgrades, that's not actually long enough. And it's like a browser default thing. It's not an Ember thing. So setting it to like 50 or something will most likely get you the stack frames where the thing originates. So that's the first thing, because you don't even know where to look yet until you do that. With the tool, you can have it raise, so you can get a breakpoint there. You can inspect the stack. Hopefully, that means you can figure out where it's coming from. Worst case scenario, find the thing that's throwing the error, copy the code, go to GitHub, do a GitHub search, and you'll generally find it. It's actually surprisingly accurate for that kind of thing. The other thing you can do is if it's built for Ember-CLI, you can kind of scroll up a little bit to see the AMD declaration to see it'll tell you the package name or the add-on's name oftentimes. So that's just identifying what to do. The thing that I would do, well, I would do a couple of things. Make sure the add-on author knows that this thing is a problem, right? Because they may not have any idea. So go to the repo, check it out. Do not +1 an issue. If you have useful, meaningful data to add to the issue, please do it. If you don't, then just watch it and go on about your life. We don't all need emails about it. So that's the first thing. Figure that out. If you have a bead on how to fix it, or you understand what this deprecation means, or you ping me in Slack or somebody else that knows something, and you can fix it, then hell yeah, submit a pull request and fix the thing. Sometimes it's tricky. Sometimes the add-on author wants to support like maybe Ember 1.8 through some current version, and that gets really tricky. But you know, most of the time it's reasonable to figure out. I would absolutely suggest trying to figure that out. There's another factor in that sometimes you'll see that the add-on has already fixed the problem, and you just have the wrong version, right? So you might find that. You might find an issue where this thing was fixed, and the code's gone, and you don't have a problem anymore. So just get upgrade. Upgrading, though, could be more problems, but there's that. What else? So the other thing you can do is you can basically skip that. Like you can have them log instead of raise in the tool, and have them log and just log all those, and just skip around and work on the ones that you know are in your app. There's no way right now to like grep the stack frames to see what's coming from your app and what's not. It's actually kind of problematic because add-ons can actually add things to your app.js file. So we don't know necessarily what thing originates in your app and what thing originates in the vendor code. We can use things like, there's a couple of tools, like Trace Kit, I think, is one. It's used by the Sentry folks. There's another one that's like Stack Explorer or something like that. But you can use those things to grab like source maps and try to like you actually like go backwards and figure out where the thing comes from if it isn't yours. But those are all pretty complicated. I would love like someone to open an issue and chat with me about how that might be implemented in the tool. But it's non-trivial. Essentially, it's black boxing, and the real problem with it is that you don't know which point really is the one that went wrong. Where did it really go off the rails? Because it may seem like it came from your app code's adapter, but it's actually Ember data like 5 stack frames down. And Ember data is not at the bottom of the stack, something else is at the bottom. It's very hard, right? So, which I think was your point. So I think the main point is make sure that the add-on author knows about it and has a beat on it, hopefully track people down, bug them about a solution. You know, most people want the bugs fixed. They may or may not know how to fix them, but they want it fixed, and would love to talk to people about how you know, how it might be worked out.
Cool. And so just to follow through a little bit further, let's say that you you do the right thing and you open a PR on against the project and you fix it, and the add-on author is on vacation after it's summertime, right? We go away. Does that mean you have to? Does that mean you have to hold your project's upgrade, or what do you do?
So there's a number of things you can do. The simplest thing to do is, assuming it's an NPM, like an add-on, not like a Bower thing. But you can just fork, update your PR, and you can change your package JSON to point to your fork. It's really trivial. I would not suggest publishing that to NPM because I think that's probably bad form. But totally, you know, once you submit a PR, you have a branch, you have a fork, you can point to it in your package JSON. All it looks like is your the GitHub username / the repo name # the branch name. That's all you do. You can reference, I think, commits and tags there also. So like if there's a specific commit that fixes it, or a specific commit where a problem was introduced, you can like lock it down to very specific versions, even more than like tagged release versions.
Cool. Awesome. Good stuff. Any other questions before we wrap up for the night? One over here.
Thanks. So I didn't use Ember by choice. My boss hired me, and we're an Ember company. We do Ember. So
you sound really smart.
It was you know, the steep learning curve and everything, and obviously it wasn't something that I went out to try to do. But I think that I have a little bit of a criticism, so I want to point out the awesome things first. That the things that frustrated me about Ember, I see a lot of that going away. I really like the path that Ember's been going down. I think it's just been getting better every minor release. Now that being said, I do the idea of the Ember add-ons causing this difficulty. We're making, you know, really large, complicated, awesome apps that require us to use to build upon the work of others. I mean, the work that everybody contributes enables us to make better things. So it's sort of like, yes, it's a bonus that we get to use this stuff that we didn't write, but now it's sort of like a requirement for these next level apps that we can all make so fast that we depend on. And so this issue of upgrading, and now we have all these dependencies that also need to upgrade. And now I think unless things have changed with 1.13, but with starting from 1.11, it seemed like the DOM actually became private API. So
What do you mean by that? The DOM is like the browser. Like, we don't control the DOM.
Right. So if I use like a jQuery widget or something, and that, you know, doesn't come from Ember, but it modifies the DOM, but that is also a part of the DOM that's modified by Ember. Ember will erase whatever attributes were added by that other, you know, outside Ember thing.
Yep.
So. And I understand the reason for that, and it makes sense. But is there any hope that in the future we'll be able to?
Well, you can absolutely update things that are inside the bounds of your element, right? You can control the inner HTML essentially. If you are in, for example, in an each or something, and you're trying to move things around, you have to do a careful job of making sure that you maintain the chain of essentially ownership, right? And the parents and all that stuff. It is possible. Things like the Ember wormhole does a great job of this, right? You can take, it's an add-on. It basically lets you have an Ember component that's rendered from within a template, but it's actually shown somewhere completely different. It's taking absolute control of where the thing goes. And to my knowledge, it certainly was at the time, and I believe it still is because I think it's very important. It uses all public API. So, so it's totally possible, right? You have to be careful about it. You got to do the right thing. I'm not sure exactly the scenario like that you're hitting. Could be a bug. Like we're not above bugs, right? But certainly having jQuery plugins, outside things like you might use Tether or something like that. Having those guys update the DOM and stuff, that's absolutely a thing that does work today. In 1.13, in beta, in Canary, those things all work. If a given scenario doesn't work, then it's either a bug in one of the two projects, right? Or the way that they're being melded together. So you can definitely manipulate the DOM underneath the thing. Is that right?
Yeah.
He has a comment.
That was, for those of you who didn't hear, the new lifecycle hooks make it a lot easier to do this.
Right. So in 1.13, basically what that means is, so before in lower versions of lower than 1.13, you might have to have an observer on some maybe markdown data and then re-render, use a jQuery element to render the markdown or something like that. This is just an example off the top of my head. So now the lifecycle hooks make it really easy because you basically get a method in your component called when the things that were provided to you as bound attributes have changed every time. Sort of conceptually similar to the insert element, only not just on insertion, but also on update. So, and there's two different hooks, one for did init adders and one for did update adders. That's just an example, but so there's many more things you can actually do at that point. If Ember re-renders and it blows away the thing, you can basically you have a hook to implement to say, hey, jQuery thing, go do your stuff, right? For example. What was that the last?
So I just want to make sure it sounded like you understood, but because I've actually talked to you about this.
Hopefully, I was smarter then than I am now.
No, we were the specific instance, the situation I was running into was we had to add a class. Basically, my company, we have many apps. Some of them don't use Ember. And we put together this tool that allows us to take, okay, we want the standard header across all the apps. So we just drop in the header, and it's basically got some JavaScript that goes with it. And for the drop-downs to work in the header, I need the JavaScript to be able to change the classes. Now we're incorporating, I'm making the markup with Ember, and Ember is also changing the classes for the same elements.
Right, and it expects to own the classes.
Right.
Yeah, I vaguely recall this. It is not, so it used to, in older versions, it used to merge, I think, classes because it was using jQuery add class and remove class to update them. Now we're actually maintaining the full list of the classes. You should be able to add them to the class name bindings to just push them into the array. And then Ember will do all the work. You don't have to add the classes at all. You can use JS to just push them into Ember's internal array representation of the classes that are going to be put in the DOM. That's just one example, one idea. I don't know. I feel like it should be solvable. I vaguely recall the issue now, but I don't. By having a component, the component has an element. The Ember object owns that element. That's not saying that Ember owns the DOM. It's saying Ember owns the DOM for a given element that it is asked to render. It's very different. But I think it should totally be possible. We should definitely make it work. I just, off the top of my head, I'm not the expert. We'll make Ray and Chris fix it.
Cool. All right. So with that, I think we're going to wrap up. Any closing thoughts to share, Rob?
Nope.
All right. Hey, let's give it up for Rob Jackson. Thank you. All right, so I know normally we hang out here in in chat some. We've been asked to try to clear out more rapidly tonight, so please cooperate in doing that. For those of you who are going to Lavender Lake, we'll leave in just a couple of minutes. I'm just going to collect my stuff, and if you don't mind stacking these chairs in groups of 3, that would be